60 Minutes Rewind.
Half the time, someone is unhappy with a judge's ruling. The normal recourse is an appeal, but in the caustic atmosphere of today's politics, there's a real chance the disgruntled party will threaten the judge. In the last 5 years, threats of federal judges have jumped 400% to more than 4,000 last year. Many of them death threats, sometimes ending in violence. Now, judges are breaking with tradition and publicly calling on lawmakers to provide more protection. One of the strongest voices is federal judge Esther Salas. This past July, she was at home in New Jersey, in the basement with her son Daniel, cleaning up after his 20th birthday party, when a man, disguised as a FedEx driver, pulled up outside.
Danny turned around and he said, "Let's keep talking. I love talking to you, Mom." And it was at that exact moment that the doorbell rang. And before I could stop him, he just shot up the stairs. The next thing I hear is boom. It just sounded like a mini bomb. And then I hear no. And then I hear boom, boom, boom. And I just screamed, "What is happening?" When I got upstairs, it was something no mother should ever see.
Daniel lying bleeding by the door. Mark, her husband, on his knees, holding his side. Daniel was barely clinging to life.
I didn't even know what to do. I remember picking up his shirt and seeing the bullet hole. You know, we were screaming, "Daniel, hold on, and don't leave us." And then I just, as I think about that day, I realized I was watching my only child fade away.
Daniel died on the way to the hospital. Mark is lucky to be alive. How seriously injured was he?
Mark was shot 3 times in the right chest, the left abdomen, in the arm.
A close-knit family, they called themselves the Three Musketeers. Judge Salas told us Daniel, a college sophomore, was the center of their universe. From his wounds, the FBI said it appeared Daniel had tried to block the gunman. When did you realize that the attack was meant for you?
It wasn't until the FBI debriefings, they've looked at this case inside and out, tell me, "Ma'am, you were the target. He wanted to get you."
The shooter was Roy Den Hollander, a 72-year-old lawyer. He harbored deep hatred for women and left behind a bitter manifesto. He accused Judge Salas of being, quote, "a lazy Latina," dragging her feet on his lawsuit. Police found his body the next day. He had shot himself. The FBI discovered he had killed another lawyer a week before. Then he went hunting for Judge Salas.
He knew obviously where I lived. He knew my routes to work. He knew the church we attended. He had Daniel's school. He knew baseball games. Just a complete workup on me and my family.
The information that he got, all from legal sources?
All open sources, they call it.
We met Judge Salas outside her home 6 months after Daniel's murder. She told us her husband needs additional surgery. The house has been sold. 20 years of wonderful memories, she told us, and one that's excruciating.
We are living every parent's worst nightmare, making preparations to bury our only child, Daniel.
Last August, in a highly unusual move for a federal judge, Judge Salas made a personal plea to lawmakers on YouTube.
We may not be able to stop something like this from happening again, but we can make it hard for those who target us to track us down.
Since Daniel's funeral, Judge Salas has become a crusader for federal legislation to scrub judges' personal information from the internet. Her mission became more urgent when the FBI discovered a second locker in New Jersey belonging to her son's killer. What did they find? What was in the locker?
They found another gun, a Glock, more ammunition. But the most troubling thing they found was a manila folder with a workup on Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor.
Yes. Chilling.
What do you think when you find that a Supreme Court justice was on his list?
More than on his list, on his sites. They had her favorite restaurants, where she worked out, her friends.
Tonight is the first time that plot has been revealed.
Who knows what could have happened? But we need to understand that judges are at risk. We need to understand that we put ourselves in great danger every day for doing our jobs. This fact has to wake us up. As the first Hispanic woman to serve as a district court judge,
Judge Salas told us she never dreamed she'd be putting her family in harm's way when she was sworn in 2011. The last judicial security upgrade was 15 years ago, after Chicago Judge Joan Lefkow came home one night and found her husband and mother shot dead by a disgruntled plaintiff. The new legislation to be taken up by the Senate is seeking more than $250 million for home security and 1,000 more deputy marshals. It would erase a long list of personal data online, such as a home address, driver's license, and property tax records. You chose to be a judge, and in becoming a public person, don't you have to give up some of your personal details for the sake of accountability?
you're right, I did choose to become a public servant. And if anyone has a problem with what I've ruled in a particular case, they can appeal. If anyone is upset, the courthouse address, it's known to everyone. Come to the courthouse. But why do you need to come to my house?
We can't show you, but U.S. Marshals now provide round-the-clock security for Judge Salas. She told us judges are increasingly threatened online. Last year, there were 4,200 threats against federal judges. She read us a few of those.
We, quote, must start killing these corrupt politicians and judges and their families, end quote. Another one. The judge is a traitor and has a death sentence.
And this is since the death
This is
of
since Daniel's murder in this very house. One other one, just in Mississippi, quote, I will kill you. I just want to get the gun and come down there and blow all their brains out.
State of Washington versus Donald J. Trump.
But perhaps no judge in the country has felt the heat of online threats more than senior U.S. District Judge James Robart.
No hate, no fear. Everyone is welcome here.
Emotions were already running high when Judge Robart temporarily blocked former President Trump's first travel ban, barring some Muslim travelers. Critics posted his home phone and address online, but nothing prepared him for the tsunami of hate when President Trump used his Twitter bully pulpit to scorn him as a so-called judge.
When you call someone a so-called judge, what you do is you attack the judiciary. You may not even have wanted to convey that message, but that's the message which your 40 million Twitter followers took down, which was you were never authorized to issue this decision.
Death threats flooded in. Then President Trump tweeted again. If I recall, he also said to blame you if there should be a terrorist attack on the country.
People took that as somehow I was giving permission for their families to be endangered. And then the tone for a number of the messages turned into, you must be stopped.
What did you think about that when the president attacks you?
I thought he had a right to attack my decision. I don't think that criticizing a judge is acceptable. I recognize there's a dispute on that. There is no dispute at the point that you start to talk about, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to hurt you, or more importantly to me, I'm going to hurt your family. That's over the line and can't be tolerated.
Judge Robart was bombarded with 40,000 messages. 1,100 were serious enough to be investigated. There were so many death threats that U.S. Marshals set up camp around the judge's house.
The idea of needing a bomb-sniffing dog to go into a restaurant before we could have lunch impacts you, but you just try to not let that bother you.
That actually happened?
Yes. If you want to know how to be really unpopular with restaurant owners, show up with your dog, which runs around the restaurant barking, and a number of U.S. Marshals who are noticeable.
You're chuckling now, but I take it that at the time you didn't see the humor in this.
No, I didn't.
Then, federal investigators uncovered something more ominous. Thousands of threats that looked to be from Americans were actually from Russia, part of a long game by Vladimir Putin to splinter American democracy.
If Putin can undermine a significant segment of the population's willingness to accept a court's decision, then he can cause chaos in this country.
Suzanne Spalding ran top cybersecurity operations for both Democratic and Republican administrations. She told us Russia undermines the justice system by fanning some American suspicions that judges are partisan. What did Judge Robart do to put himself in Russia's crosshairs?
They attacked him, his decision as reflecting his personal political preferences, as opposed to following the rule of law. And that leads people to conclude that it is appropriate to make threats of violence, and as we saw in the tragic case of Judge Salas, to actually carry out an attack of violence.
How big a threat do you think this is?
You know, I think we got a taste of that on January 6th.
Spalding told us since the siege of the Capitol, there's more pressure on law enforcement to determine which online threats might turn into physical attacks. Take the example of this Alabama man who answered the online call with a truckload of weapons and a hand-scribbled hit list. Second from the top, an Indiana judge. So how do you answer people who will say that what I say online, even if it's aggressive, it's my First Amendment right?
So you do have a First Amendment right to express your opinion, even if it's an unpopular opinion. But threats of violence, incitement to violence, those are things that law enforcement can legitimately look into, particularly when it's against our public servants.
Judge Salas lives with those threats. But when the courthouse reopens after the pandemic, she told us Daniel would want her to keep going. Will you be concerned when you re-enter this courtroom?
You know, we're changed forever. You know, Mark and I are different people today, sadly. But as far as what I do on the bench, no, that's not going to change. I'm not going to let Mr. Hollander take that away from me. My integrity, my work ethic, and my pride. No, he won't take that.